What is up, everybody? Today we are in my basement. I want to go over some movements, some stretches, some mobility work to alleviate back pain. All right, obviously, a lot of us struggle with back pain in general. And now, even more of us have probably come across it since you're working maybe at a couch with a laptop on your lap or at a less ergonomical setup than your office. So, the good news is when it's not a trauma, back pain can be alleviated relatively easily through a variety of mobility work in the muscles that surround that area. So, the lighting's not ideal here. It's kind of doom and gloom outside, but I'll go through a variety of stretches. We'll use some implements, and I'll show you a variety of ways to alleviate that pain in your back. All right, guys, so what I want to start with is mobilizing the glutes. We'll be doing glutes, TFL, hip flexor, IT band, but the reason I want to start with the glutes is because it tends to be one of the biggest contributors for most people's back pain. So we're going to start that one actually with just a pigeon stretch, and you yogis will know what this is all about. But you put that leg out and you feed your other leg back. Now, I want this shin to stay at about 90 degrees. If I tuck it in, I lose a lot of that intensity and a lot of that tension. So I want to trap this, pin it down, and then I'm going to move around in this position. I don't have to just be static and still. I can find where it's most intense, like right here, and I try to endure that position. Okay, and this is something where we're not talking about 3 sets of 30 seconds or something, right? We got to really, back pain is a pain in the ass. We got to put the time in to fix this. I'm saying you want to sit in this for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Give yourself a chance to actually mobilize that area and find what exactly is causing that issue. Like right now, my left side's way worse than my right. Okay? A way to progress this stretch would be to give yourself a deficit. So maybe I throw my leg up on the couch, I get into that same position, and now I have a deficit between my hip and the floor, and I can sink in on that, and it gives me a more intense stretch. It's essentially the same as doing the piriformis stretch standing, but I get to use my body weight to sink into that position. All right, next, I'm going to use the AccuMobility ball. It's basically a lacrosse ball with a stand, but a lacrosse ball, baseball, softball, any of these things are perfectly good to use. This, I put on the glute, hook that ankle on my other knee, and then I lean into it. And this is nasty. This is nasty. I feel tension in my hips, even the outside of my knee, and in my glute. And again, you can kind of manipulate your body position here. That's another, obviously, both legs deal. It's real intense. But again, right, even if that's too intense, you do want to endure like a 7 out of 10 on intensity. But, even just being able to lay on your back and pull that knee up into flexion, stretch that piriformis stretch this way, those 3 or 4 stretches are an awesome way to target those glutes, and we want to be able to stick in those positions and really force those muscles to lengthen. All right, guys, so the next area that we're going to mobilize is the IT band. It's actually mostly going to be the vastus lateralis, the outside of the quad, but this band tension right here can get really, really high, and mobilizing the muscles underneath it is huge for back pain. Some people, when they have tension here, it manifests as knee pain. For most, it's that low back pain. So we've done the glute, the piriformis. Now we're going to move down into this band of tension right here. I have this Rolga. My dog thought it was a chew toy at first, but that's okay. So for a lot of people, this will be a very intense method. I don't know that it's acute enough to really mobilize it well, but it's an awesome start, especially for people who aren't used to that type of intensity. So you're going to throw that foam roller right at the top of the knee, and you're just going to slide up to the hip. And you can use one foot as a rudder. We've talked about this in my foam rolling videos. Get in there. It's an awesome start, and for a lot of people, that will be really uncomfortable. Next, though, I would move to the either AccuMobility ball or lacrosse ball, and I like to find that area of tension and just sink into it. and just put body weight on it. And just creep your way up. And you can add, stack your feet, add intensity, breathe into those positions, and allow that ball to start sinking into that tissue. And just work your way from the top of the knee up to the hip, and you'll start feeling where it's most intense, and that's obviously the area that you're going to focus on. The next piece would be the Theragun. Theragun's an awesome tool for this. You can just run it up and down. Same with the glute. We didn't do that, but run that tool up and down the side. Awesome way to break that tissue up and start mobilizing. But that's a great way to start with the IT band. So we've gotten the glutes and the IT bands. Next, we're going to move on to the hips. All right, guys, so the next area of interest is kind of the front, the hips. The TFL, which is basically the muscle, I always say, like if you put your hand in your pocket, that's kind of right where that muscle goes. And we're going to work through the hips. We have a band here, Theragun, and some other things. But first, all we're going to start with is a hip flexor stretch. So you're going to get your opposite leg up in front, and you're going to pull into that hip. Now, when we're doing this hip flexor stretch, some people feel it right away, some won't. But when you're doing it on the ground like this, you never want to be leaning like this. You don't want your hip in front of the knee. It's way too much stress on that hip, and all you're doing is stressing that tissue from the back. What we want to do is keep our hip over our knee, but just engage that glute and lengthen that, and you'll feel that stretch. Obviously, a lot of people know this next progression, which is the rear foot elevated, drop down, and again, same thing. I'm not getting out and leaning into that, leveraging into that hip. What I'm doing is I'm sitting, and then I tuck my butt under. I clench my glutes or tuck my butt, and I let that tension right here add up. Now this one I'm already feeling. It's a good one here. Thirdly is when we start adding band assistance. You need a pretty thick band for this for the most part, but you can create tension, put it under a couch leg or whatever, but hopefully it stays under there. Get it above the hip. A lot of people put it right at the bottom of their leg. I don't like that. Get it up above that glute. Then you step back and sit. I'm upright, front leg's at 90, and I tuck my glute under, right? No stretch, stretch. And again, not leveraging in, just tucking, scooping. And I let that tension build, okay? And again, these are all stretches where, like I was talking about before, I'm not a big fan of that 3 sets of 30 seconds. It's better than nothing for certain, but if you can really leverage into that, and give yourself 2 minutes of pain, that's what we want. Last, I'm going to take this, I'm going to stick it in the hip. We're going to go right by the pocket, right in the front, and again, you'll play with where you feel that, but you can just leverage into it. You can scoop your leg under and just find where that sticky spot is, lay on it, breathe into it, and just surrender to that ball and try to let that tissue lengthen. I think, actually the Theragun too. Another great one. This one's great for everything, but just having it in that hip, when your hip's in that, this would be a shortened position because I'm sitting up, but you can lay back, you can work that whole area over with the Theragun. But I think just using these methods, when you start to alleviate all that muscle that's carrying tension surrounding your back, we're going to get less and less pull on the back itself, and I think you'll see that back pain disappear. So give those a try, put the mobility stuff to work, and see if you can't get rid of all those aches and pains.